Well, countless children in care in Saskatchewan face a pretty harsh reality on their 18th birthday. They're forced to move out and cut off from much of the financial and social support they previously relied on. Many people are calling for change. Earlier this week, Saskatchewan's Child and Youth Advocate released his annual report. It calls on the province to increase the definition of a child to age 18, as well as extend support up to the age of 24 as they transition from being in care to adulthood. Alisha Shannon aged out of the system just over a year ago, and she joins me now in our studio. Hi.
Hi, Sheila. Thanks for having me.
Well, we want to hear firsthand someone who's actually experienced this. So what was your experience? What happened in your life?
Well, I was living in street culture from the time I was about 16 years old.
In their shelter?
I moved into their shelter when I was 16, and then they moved me into one of their group homes. Mm-hmm. And once, I was in and out. I wasn't really doing what I was supposed to be doing when you're 16, 17, 18 years old, which would be going to school, building nice relationships with good people. I was struggling. I wasn't doing as well as most youth would be if they were living at home.
How did you get there? How did you go from a home environment to street culture? What happened?
Well, I wasn't a very great kid. I put my parents through a lot of things that I probably shouldn't have been putting them through. I also suffer from my own personal mental disorders, which makes it pretty hard for me to have decent interpersonal relationships. So it gets to the point where, my parents couldn't really handle me anymore, and they had no other choice but to kick me out. Otherwise, our relationship would have gone even worse if they didn't do that.
And you were 15, 16?
Mm-hmm.
16. And so you went to street culture? What happened?
Yeah, my mom actually sat me down at the kitchen table after we had had the discussion. It was time for me to move out, and called a social worker for me. That social worker then referred me to street culture because they're one of our only resources in the city that really do help the youth. And from what she had heard about my story and who I was, she felt like it was a good fit. And she was definitely correct on that.
Mm. So what supports were available for you? What government supports were available to you as a young person?
Almost immediately put me onto Section 10.
What's that?
That is the function. That is the program that they use to help support our youth under 18. So if you've been put into the system, not born into the system, you will be under Section 10. And that support is pretty much complete and full. You have your rent paid in full. You have your damage deposits paid in full. They make sure that you're in a house, that you're safe. Your social worker helps you with any sort of mental health issues you have. You need to go to school to get that funding. So it's pretty much forced that you are getting an education, but it's needed. You get more than enough money for your food every month, and it's pretty much just you're perfectly on your way.
Until you're 18.
Until you're 18.
So what happened when you turned 18?
Well, I had an awesome social worker. I really did. She gave me the heads up about what it's like when you turn 18. About a month before my 18th birthday, she said, there's going to be a big change. Wasn't even what she had really prepared me for. I hadn't expected it to be that drastic. You go from having everything covered to having nothing covered. You get about $600 a month, just in general, about $600 a month for everything. So that's your rent and your food, anything else you need throughout your month, about $600. And in what universe can you live off $600 a month?
So that's money. What about supports? Because you were getting, you said, really good support for mental health issues, getting help from a social worker. What about supports after you turned 18?
Well, my adult social worker pretty much looked at me and said, these are all things that you need to do on your own. I had brought up the fact because you also get aged out of child and youth. And they're who deal with mental health issues in anybody under 18. So you also age out of that program too. So not only had I have not as much financial support as I did beforehand, but I had absolutely zero mental health support. And that was on me to be able to get again. And, you can call, you can do whatever you need to do, but if you're not a social worker, they don't take you very seriously. So I was sitting on waiting lists for months just trying to get in to get extra mental health help, and sitting on waiting lists for months trying to get extra financial help because, their main thing is, there's more than enough programs that you can apply to.
And your thoughts on that?
In how though?
Yeah.
Nobody explained that to me when I was a youth. Nobody taught me the processes behind trying to get extra funding for myself so that I could support me and go to school. Nobody tells you how to do that.
And that's where street culture, you came through because of street culture.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So is it kind of like, poof, you're an adult on your 18th birthday?
Yeah. You get a whole month after you were 18 years old to get your affairs figured out and get onto adult assistance or get a job or do whatever you want to do.
Well, and there's a whole system to navigate there.
Oh, yeah. You don't get onto social assistance within a month. It doesn't work that way. You can call, you can harass them, you can be on that phone every single day, consistent. I need help, I need help, I need help.
So how did you feel about that at the time?
I was frustrated. I was depressed. I felt abandoned. I felt like I didn't know what I was doing with my life. All of a sudden, I'm 18 years old and I'm expected to be doing 1,000,010 things that nobody taught me how to do. And I felt like I was just being asked way too much of somebody who's just freshly 18 years old. Barely had anything figured out for myself.
So when you hear the children's advocate talking about a transition period and raising that age, what's your response to that?
I think that's amazing. I think that's exactly what we need. It's not fair that we look at an age and think they're an adult. That's not how that works. People have their own issues. I personally wasn't doing school the way that I should have. So I was way behind. So by the time I was 18 years old, I still had a lot more schooling I needed to do, but no financial or mental support to help me get through that. So I was forced to drop out and get a job so that I could pay my rent and so that I could do what I needed to do. And maybe if there was actually a transition period, somebody who was there to help me, explain to me how I can support myself without having to say goodbye to an actual education or put it off.
Did you ever get back?
No, not yet.
You will?
Oh, I do plan on going back, yes.
Yeah.
But, you need to make sure that you're financially stable before you can do that.
Yeah. So with your work with street culture, because you're employed by street culture
Yes, I am.
now, you must meet a lot of other young people who have thoughts on this. What
Yes, I
kinds
do.
of things do you hear from them?
It's all the same. I've found my experience has also been a lot of other people's experiences. I know a lot of people who the moment we turned 18 years old, people who I grew up with in street culture, the moment we turned 18, they were also dropped. And a lot of them didn't get to follow a healthy path like I did. It took a lot of work on my behalf to get to where I am now. And maybe if we had that extra support, you wouldn't see people falling into paths that they don't belong in. And it leads to so many awful things. It leads to living in the street again. It leads to gang members and drug use, and because there's no education behind it. It's what we feel like that's all they have, because they have no extra support to back up that it isn't all that they have. They have more.
All right. Alisha, thank you so much for coming in. We really appreciate you sharing your story with us this morning.
Thanks for having me.
And glad that it turned out well for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.